Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you're joining from, and welcome back to another edition of Green Ground with me, Alvin. There is something quietly powerful about these in-between hours of the day, when the world is waking up in some places and winding down in others. It's in these moments that the news feels less like noise and more like a living pulse. Stories move across continents, linking Florida to Eastern Europe, southern Mexico, to the corridors of power in Washington, and reminding us just how tightly woven our global reality truly is. Settle in, take a breath, and let's move through today's international landscape together with clarity, balance, and perspective. Let's begin with diplomacy under the spotlight in the United States. A high-profile meeting in Florida brought together two leaders whose relationship has long shaped headlines and policy debates. The encounter blended ceremony with unmistakably firm messaging. On one side, recognition and symbolic gestures underscored a long-standing political alliance. On the other, direct warnings and uncompromising positions signaled that gestures alone are never the full story in international relations. The discussion touched on nuclear ambitions, regional security, and the future of fragile ceasefires. These moments matter not only for what is said publicly, but for the signals sent quietly to allies and adversaries alike. Diplomatic theater, when paired with clear red lines, can recalibrate expectations far beyond the room in which the meeting takes place. That same diplomatic momentum continues with renewed engagement focused on Eastern Europe. Talks involving Ukraine come at a moment of heightened tension, following reports of military actions that have reached deeper than before into contested territory. The conflict there has become a grinding test of endurance, strategy, and international unity. Each meeting between leaders now carries immense symbolic and practical weight. Decisions made in private discussions can influence battlefields, economies, and civilian lives within days. The question hanging in the air is whether dialogue can slow escalation or whether it merely runs parallel to it. In this phase of the conflict, diplomacy is no longer abstract. It is immediate, consequential, and closely watched across the world. From geopolitics, we turn to tragedy closer to the ground. In southern Mexico, a passenger train derailment has left communities in mourning and families searching for answers. This railway line was conceived as a project of connection and development, designed to link two coasts and stimulate regional growth. Instead, it became the site of a devastating accident that claimed lives and injured many more. The images are difficult to shake. Twisted metal, emergency crews racing against time, and passengers whose journeys ended abruptly and violently. As investigations begin, difficult questions are emerging about infrastructure safety, oversight, and the balance between ambitious development and human cost. Progress, when rushed or under-examined, can expose vulnerabilities that only become visible after tragedy strikes. Amid sorrow, there are also moments that hint at cautious hope. In Eastern Europe, the release of more than 100 political prisoners has drawn international attention. For years, these individuals symbolized resistance, civil courage, and the personal cost of dissent. Their release followed diplomatic negotiations and changes in international pressure, illustrating how policy decisions can sometimes translate into very real human outcomes. Watching former prisoners step back into public life is a reminder that even in rigid systems, movement is possible. It does not erase the years lost or the suffering endured, but it offers a glimpse of what incremental progress can look like in places where optimism is often scarce. Elsewhere, the news grows more complex and in some cases controversial. In Central America, a former head of state has been released from U.S. custody following a presidential pardon, despite a conviction tied to serious criminal charges. The decision has reignited debates about justice, accountability, and the reach of political power. Such moments tend to polarize public opinion, forcing societies to confront uncomfortable questions about equality before the law and the long shadows cast by leadership. In North Africa and the Mediterranean region, a fatal plane crash involving senior military figures has brought renewed attention to the risks faced even by those at the highest levels of authority. It is a sobering reminder that power does not grant immunity from danger, and that instability often carries unpredictable consequences far beyond active conflict zones. Other stories continue to ripple outward. In Southeast Asia, the extradition of a human rights activist has raised alarms among international observers, highlighting concerns about cross-border repression and the shrinking space for dissent. In another part of the region, decisive action against alleged corruption has fueled intense public debate, signaling both institutional resolve and political risk. Across the Atlantic, governments have taken firmer stances on security, updating terrorist designations in response to evolving threats. Meanwhile, in Europe, law enforcement operations have dismantled large criminal networks through coordinated, high-intensity actions that feel cinematic, yet address very real dangers tied to organized crime. Taken together, these stories form a mosaic of our present moment. diplomacy and conflict, tragedy and relief, accountability and controversy, all coexist within the same global news cycle. What connects them is not just geography, but consequence. Decisions made by leaders ripple into communities. Infrastructure projects reflect national ambition, but also national responsibility. Acts of repression and acts of release both reveal how power is exercised, challenged, and sometimes reshaped. As we navigate this constant flow of information, the goal is not simply to consume headlines, but to understand their deeper implications. The world is not moving in one direction. It is pulling in many at once. And it is in recognizing those tensions that we become more informed, more critical, and more engaged citizens of a shared global space. If today's reflection gave you a clearer lens on what's unfolding, take a moment to support the conversation. Like this video, leave a comment with the story that resonated most with you, and subscribe to Green Ground for thoughtful, elegant perspectives on the world around us. You'll find more details and ways to stay connected in the description. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and keep asking the questions that matter.